This is the Only in Louisiana podcast with Michelle Southern.
When you see stories about Jazz Fest, or even when you hear DJs like me give away tickets on the radio, it's all about the music and usually the big name acts on the bill of the 7-day festival that spans the last weekend in April, first weekend in May every year in New Orleans. But there's certainly much more to the iconic festival than maybe the average fest goer might realize. And we're going to talk about some of those for a Jazz Fest series to kick off season 2 of Only in Louisiana, starting with someone who you'd be, quite frankly, lost without. Her name is Nan Parati, and she's the one who helps you get around Jazz Fest with those signature signs with eye-catching, perky letters spread throughout the grounds, letting you know where to get the food, beer, what stage you're at, what you should and shouldn't do, where you should park and where you shouldn't park. And that's just scratching the surface. And Nan has been doing this now for more than 3 decades. Nan, we really appreciate you joining us for the Only in Louisiana podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So before we, dive into everything that you do for festival every year, I wanted to first talk about, how your career got to the place where it is today as the epic sign creator for Jazz Fest. I mean, how did this all begin for you?
Well, it's sort of funny because I got fired twice. You remember Whole Food Company back in the old days? Whole Food Company, the forerunner to Whole Foods Market over on Esplanade?
Yes.
Okay, so I got hired there in 1983 to be working the produce department. And I think I probably worked maybe 2 months when Peter Roy, who owned Whole Food Company, fired me because I was really good at talking to people. I was really good at everything. I was not good at stacking vegetables. And so I got fired. And the day he fired me, I said, oh, wait. You guys need somebody in cheese. I'm really, really good at cheese. I promise I can do that because that means I can talk to people. That's what that's about. Okay, great. All right, man, we'll hire you in cheese. We'll see what happens. So he hired me in cheese. And about 2 months after that, I got fired again for just being bad at what I was doing. And the very day he fired me from that, the guy who was the sign maker, who at that time his name was Keith Fashon, he was leaving. And I said, I promise you, I can make signs. I promise. Give me one more chance. And he sighed heavily and said, all right, this is your last chance because, he really did need a sign maker. Not everybody can do that. So I got to do that. And then within a few months, I was head of all of our advertising.
That's awesome.
That's how I became that part of it. And then Jazz Fest needed a sign writer. They had a guy named Roy Lands who used to paint all of the banners and everything. If you look in the old pictures of Jazz Fest, he painted all of the banners that said stage 1, stage 2 and all that. And, but they didn't have anybody to really write the signs for the stages. And so 1985, Nancy Oxenschlager from the Jazz Fest called me and asked if I could make stage signs. And I said, yeah, I can do that because she'd seen me at Whole Foods. She'd seen my work at Whole Foods. So I came over that year and I did just all the stage signs and they liked them. And then the next year they called me back again and said, and this is an actual quote. The guy said, could you also make parking signs? And I said, yeah, I could do that. And he said, could you make no parking signs? I could do that too.
Because there's a lot of no parking signs.
There are lots of yes, lots of those. And so that's how that got started. And then I just kind of kept doing it. And so that's what I tell young people, do something for 38 years. It's going to pay off. So remember that, young people.
Yeah. And, they're so distinctive, so creative.
Thank you.
Your personality is clearly thrown into every one of them. I mean, tell us.
No, that's not my personality. That's the signs. This is the truth. The signs tell me how they want to look. They really do. So it's not my personality. It's the signs. Yes, it's a signs person. Sometimes we fight. I just got in an argument with one a few minutes ago because I thought it should say street and it wanted to say. Well, actually, the person wanted it to say ST for street, and it wanted to say street, STREET, and the sign won. So I hope they like your sign. That's just how it goes. They talk to me.
Well, the font. Talk about the font. I know that you have it copyrighted, and it's named after you.
I have two fonts. The one that's on the stage signs, like the names of the bands, that one's actually named after me. That's called Peretti. I come from a family of creative designers, and I said, what should I call the font? And they said, call it Peretti. That's the way you should do. But the other one, the one that says like no parking or exit this way or any of those things like that, that's called I actually have to say I'm kind of proud of this. It's called Fun Times Roman.
Fun Times Roman.
Yes, Fun Times Roman. I came up with that myself, so I was proud of that.
Yeah, that is
I've got
good.
two fonts.
Taking everybody, the font that everybody hates the most and making it better and fun. Literally.
Right, exactly.
And naming it such. Well,
right.
Nan, so, we have to talk about how we didn't have the festival for 2 years, but you were able to keep busy, even though, you weren't creating the directing signs for music lovers at the New Orleans Fairgrounds. What happened? How did your pandemic survival, I suppose, come to pass?
Well, it was kind of amazing because when I realized, when they announced they were actually canceling the festival, there was no way I could believe that was going to happen. There was no way. We were here in 2006, right after Katrina. How could this happen? So I was really, really upset. So I applied to the Music Relief Foundation, or to the festival's foundation, for some money, because I was trying to figure out how am I going to carry on with this. I don't really know. So I applied to that. I posted something on Facebook saying, if anybody wants to sign, I can do those. But I didn't know what, I was out of my mind. I'm frequently out of my mind, but I was really at that point. I didn't know what to do to make some money. And then WWOZ came up with Festing in Place and asked if I would make all the signs for all the artists for Festing in Place. And so I did that. And it went really, really, really well. And my favorite part of it was at the end of every broadcast, they would say, and thanks to Nan Parati for the signs. And I would stand out on my front porch and raise my hands. If anybody happened to look at me, but I don't think anybody ever did, but I was very proud of myself. So that took off. And then they decided to do more Festing in Places, throughout the year, different events, but the same kind of thing where they would play the festival music. And so they had me make signs for those as well. And then we turned it into a fundraiser for WWOZ, where I would make signs because people went crazy. They loved the idea and they were ordering the signs. And so a portion of the money from every sign went to support WWOZ. And then we also included the Music Relief Fund. So then I was raising money for the Musicians Relief Fund, which made me so happy with the foundation. So the very thing I'd applied to, now I was able to contribute to. And so it just took off, and I ended up making signs for people all over the world, and I'm not making that up, for people in Japan, Australia, France, England, even Canada, everywhere. It was amazing. I get emails from people frequently saying, hey, I'm in Seattle, and look, guys, here's your sign, and they take a picture and send it to me. So that's really fun. That's really, really cool to see them all over the country and all over the world. It's really neat.
Yeah, and I know that another person who's so Jazz Fest passionate, a good friend of mine, Lauren Haydell, was posting. That's where I learned that you were selling them that way, was from her Facebook page, and all the pictures of folks that were festing in place. It was so awesome to see. It just made you feel good,
Yeah, it certainly made me feel good, and it but it really does. It does. People love the festival so much, and so having a little piece of it, I think, just made people happy, and it made me happy to be able to extend that love throughout the world. It made me really, really happy.
So orders, I'm assuming, went crazy there during that time.
Yeah, they did. They still are. And this year is really, really kind of amazing because I'm doing Jazz Fest and, everything else I do this time of year anyway. And the orders are still coming in. And I love doing it. So I'm not at all complaining. I'm busy, but I am not at all complaining. I love what I do. I could not be happier in life.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Music Relief Fund, because so many people that we talk to about Jazz Fest depend on the festival to support them year round, So the cancellation just had such far-reaching effects that I don't think a lot of people even realize how huge it was.
Right. It's so true.
Well, any idea how many signs you'd say you create for Jazz Fest, the festival itself, in any given year?
In 2018, I got curious about that because I was curious. And so in 2018 and 19, I kept track, and it was over 3,000 every year just for Jazz Fest.
Really?
And
over 3,000.
Yeah, all by hand. Over 3,000. Yeah, I've been keeping track this year. I haven't added it up yet, but when I do a stack of signs, and I'll just do a quick count and write it down. So I won't add it up to the very end. But it looks like it's going to be maybe about the same thing again.
Well, do you have any memorable stories from over the years that you'd like to share about Jazz Fest and sign making?
So I also, not only do I do Jazz Fest in New Orleans, I also do Newport, because that was also George Wein who started both of our festivals. And so Quint introduced me to that festival. And so I go up now and I do Newport every year as well. And one year I was up there with Quint and Bonnie Raitt. I wasn't just talking to Bonnie Raitt. Quint was talking to Bonnie Raitt, and I happened to be there. And he introduced us, and she said, "Wow, I have always wanted to know who made my signs. That is so cool." And then she invited me out to lunch, and then we went to lunch and had lunch together, and it was all because of the signs, and we had a great time. But it's amazing to me how many people at Newport also, all of the artists always sit around together, and everybody, all the lunch is served to everybody all at the same time. So we've got the installers, and we've also got the artists all sitting around at the same table, talking, hanging out, and during, before the festival or the days of the festival. And one day they were all talking, a bunch of band members were talking to each other, and I was sitting at the table, and one of them said, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I write the signs." And he went nuts, and he was so excited. And he said, "Can I do a selfie with you?" And he was from the band Trampled with Turtles. And I said, "Yeah, sure." I was really surprised. And so we took a selfie, and then other people wanted to. And I said, and I turned to Quint later that afternoon, and I said, "Quint, apparently my signs are something." And he said, "Nan, of course they are.
Yes.
I knew this was going to happen." And that was probably about 2015 or 16 or so. That was the first time I ever really knew that they had become something and that people were really excited about it.
Well, they
those were fun.
Have so much personality, though. I mean, it's not just a sign that says no parking. It says, no parking. I won't park here. It's like a happy no parking sign.
That actually is part of what I really enjoy doing, because there's so much negativity in the world, but you still can't park here.
Yeah.
So I don't want to yell at anybody. So I would like to just happily and politely say no parking, especially in my driveway. Thank you so much. You're so kind.
Thank you so much for coming.
Right, exactly. Don't park in my driveway.
Right. When do you start preparing for Jazz Fest? How long does it take to get everything ready?
We start in January. Actually, that's when the art department starts. Other departments go longer than that, but the art department starts in January when we start designing, looking at, we have a new sponsor, what would they like, how would and creating things that we then send to the sponsors so they can look at them and see, so we can get it right. And so it starts in January. I start making signs for the festival in March, and I do them at my house. I start making them at my house. I have a truck, a red pickup truck, and I use that as my desk. And so I stand out in the street with my red pickup truck, and I make signs. And then people walk by and go, "Wow, really?"
You're the Jazz Fest sign. Yeah.
No, that's like the official cubes,
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well,
they've seen the cubes, but now it's really confirmed.
Yes, time. It is actually time. Well,
right.
I saw a quote in another article that you talked about, the driving force behind the look really is Jazz Fest producer Quint Davis. I mean, his personality in the festival too. There's just so much about Jazz Fest that's loaded with passion. I mean, you can tell so much work goes in behind the creativity behind every facet of it.
Oh, absolutely. Everything comes from Quint. Everything comes from Quint. And to me, and I could be wrong here, but this is what it seems like to me. When I look at pictures of festivals before Jazz Fest, there was not the art that you see now at Jazz Fest. And I really feel that, there was some stuff, but there was not really what we've got that was created at Jazz Fest. And it was Quint's driving force. He loves the artwork. He loves the look of the festival. And I'm sure he could save money not doing all this stuff, but he loves that. And that makes me so happy, not just because it gives me a job, but because I love that too. To me, it's a festival, but it's not just the music. It's not even just the food. It's not just the crafts. It's the whole look of everything that we tie it all together. And we care, in the art department, we care extremely much about making the whole thing come together and looking good and being a really, really happy place. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I just love it so much. Years and years and years ago, one of my first Jazz Fest, I was at where everybody comes running in, when they open the gates. I was standing there, and I knew at that point I wanted to devote my life to showing people a good time. And that's what I remember thinking while I was standing there going, I love this, and that's what I want to do with my life, is show people a good time. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love working festivals, and that's why I love Quentin Davis so much, because that's what he does too, and he's so sincere about it. I love it so much.
Yeah, he's a passionate person. I mean, we all are here in Louisiana. Hence, only in Louisiana, Jazz Fest's signature look cannot be duplicated. Even if you help another festival, it's one of a kind, without question.
Right. And I always pay homage to Jazz Fest. I think everybody who sees the signs, they know where they came from. And in that same way, too, when people ask me to make a sign, I have rules. And because it is so closely related to Jazz Fest, or, it looks like Jazz Fest, I have rules. No cussing, no political signs, mm-hmm. Nothing that would imply any negativity whatsoever, nothing snarky, nothing like that. Because to me, all of these signs are all about the happiness and all about the goodness in the world. And so that's my sign making rule, is that it has to be a happy sign, or at least something positive, or, like I said, no cussing and no politics, and nothing that makes fun of anything, and not even anything that imitates another artist. I'm also very respectful of other artists like Dr. Bob. For example, he has his Be Nice or Leave, and people ask me to write that. Sometimes I say, no, that's Dr. Bob. So go see him for that, because I really respect what he does. And mm-hmm. I'm so happy that we all get to do this. This is such, sign writing is, one would think, a dying art, and yet a few of us still get to do it. And I am so honored to still be able to do this in life.
Most of the hard work is done, before the festival itself, like right now. It's not done. It gets even harder, like during festival itself.
Well, yeah. So first weekend, I mostly miss everything. I don't get to really go see many bands or anything else first weekend, because there's still so many signs to make for second weekend. So I make everything for first weekend beforehand. And of course, everything that needs to be done for the overall festival. And then first weekend, I work on second weekend signs. Then second weekend, I mostly make emergency signs. One thing I'm proud of in life is, I don't know if you remember the song John Henry, the Steel Driving Man. So I'm John Henry of the sign writing world. I'm faster than any computer or any other machine when it comes to writing signs. And so we do an awful lot of signs you'll see around the site that are done in vinyl graphics. We have a team of two women, Miriam and Beth, and they do the vinyl graphic signs for things. And those look very, very official. But anything that needs to be done right now, hurry, we need it now, I do it because I can do it faster. I can do it right then and now. We don't have to wait for it to cut out on the plotter and all that stuff that goes with it. So second weekend, I make the emergency signs that need to be made, but then second weekend I get to go out and see things. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, we're still working. We're still working hard. Well, we ain't done yet.
Well, we know Jazz Fest is coming up and you're busy right now, but can folks still order the custom signs from you?
Yeah, they can. They can indeed. Yes.
How do they find you?
See, that's one thing that I think is kind of cool too. You have to be one of the cool kids to find me. So if you find me, you're one of the cool kids. Like I don't.
So you like to keep it a secret?
It's not really a secret, but I just think it keeps it local. It keeps it Jazz Festy. It keeps it, Newporty. It keeps the festivals kind of like close to heart in a way. So I don't really advertise. I don't make a big, I have a website, but it doesn't talk really about the signs on the website. But if you Google me, you can find me easily. But my email is actually nan@nanparetti.com. And so you have to know how to spell Nan Parati. But nan@nanparetti.com. People can email me there. And that's what I prefer. That's what I like the most, because I can keep it all in one place and make them and get them to them.
Yeah. Well, Nan, you are a delightful person, and I know that you've been delighting the Jazz Fest crowd, even though they might not ever imagine or who would be behind those incredible signs, the signature signs at Jazz Fest. And, I appreciate you sharing the story with us today, and thank you for lighting our way and making sure that we don't park where we shouldn't and know where to go see what music, because it certainly is easy to get lost out there.
Well, thank you so much for wanting to talk to me. That's really, really sweet of you. And I've had a great time. Thank you.
The 2022 New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival kicks off on Friday, April 29th through May 1st for the first weekend. Then Thursday, May 5th through Sunday, May 8th. You can get tickets and all the details by visiting nojazzfest.com. And as the Jazz Fest series continues with the stories that you don't hear every day, when you listen to the second story in the Only in Louisiana podcast Jazz Fest series, it's one that is sure to make you hungry and can be described in just 2 words: crawfish bread. You can listen to the latest episodes of the Only in Louisiana podcast by visiting onlyinlouisiana.com or searching for Only in Louisiana, however you listen to podcasts. And thank you so much for subscribing and sharing.
Because only in Louisiana.